Hello folks, welcome to week 13. Unlucky for some, but not for you because you get to draw it with me. This week we're going to look at metal. So some of you have done this with me before in class, but it's always good to have a reminder and have it to hand. So metal is actually a lot easier than it looks. It looks really effective, and that's because we're separating our lights and our darks really quickly. Reflection is all about super dark and super light, which I think you hear me talk about every single week. But it's a really fun exercise. So not only that, we are also going to do this in the grid method. So grab your pencils, grab a ruler, and let's get started. So the pencils we're going to use are our 2B and our 8B. This is going to be used for our outline and our shading. I'd like to start with your 2B pencil. This is so if we make any mistakes, it's really easy to rub out. Now try not to press too hard, just in case you do need to erase any of the marks. Now we're going to use the same method as the grid method. However, this time you are going to draw your boxes in a random order. You're not going to follow it around one by one. Instead, you're going to jump around to different squares. You might want to choose the squares that feel a bit easier, or you can go for the hard stuff first. But this just means that we prevent ourselves from guessing what the image is doing. And if we follow a pattern, sometimes we can just jump the gun a little bit. So by jumping around to different squares, it really helps us to focus on that square in hand, and we're not relying on what we did previously. We're attacking each box as it comes. So for this first part of the drawing, I just want you to focus on getting the outline. And that's by using this junction method. So trying to find out where you think the lines are situated, where they cross the box, and putting those little junctions in to help you join everything together. We do have the grid method in a longer version if you're interested in that too. Now, the thing with reflective surfaces and anything that's metal, we do need our lines to be nice and clean. So it is worth just spending a bit more time on the outline to get it where you're happy with. And we've tried to be helpful in this one. We have a grid printed out. So all you need to do is download the grid and you can have that ready for you. However, if you want to remove the grid after your drawing's done, you won't be able to do that, obviously, because it's printed out. So you can draw it by hand, but if you just want to use this exercise for practice, so you can download it. Now, once the general outline is done, your next task is to block out the shadows. So what I mean by shadow, just so we're all clear, is those really, really dark patches. It's really difficult to actually see a shadow on a reflective surface because it's always catching light and bouncing it back. So in this situation, I want you to draw around every area that is black. That's a nice, easy way to know exactly what you're defining. And I know there's some mid-grays in there. There's quite a few mid-grays. But for the purpose of our shading, this will make life a lot easier once you've isolated those darkest bits and pop them on the paper, because this is what's really going to define your drawing as a 3D metallic object, is these clean, crisp lines that are super, super dark next to extreme white. So do make sure that you're looking for every single dark section in the piece. And do pay attention to the curvature of these dark bits and also to the thickness. Don't treat them all as the same thickness because each section is different. It's a little bit skinny in some places and a little bit thick in others. So you do want to be watching and getting that balance of proportion throughout the shadow phase. And remember, you can pause this video at any point if you just want to double check your drawing against the demonstration, because sometimes you might find that you've missed something. So that's the outline done. Now it's time for the fun bit. This is where we get to shade the darkest parts. And I want you to grab your 8B pencil and you're going to shade in those sections as dark as possible. A common mistake that I see people make all the time is that they are too scared to go too dark unless they make a mistake. And I completely understand that because it's a big commitment. Going dark is quite a big commitment. So I want you to trust your drawing stage. And if you spend a good amount of time on your drawing stage, then there should be no reason why you doubt yourself. And from there, then you know that the hard work is done and you can just shade in the section. It's a bit like colouring within the lines with this point. And hopefully you can see by mine that quite quickly you're starting to already envisage, I don't know if that's the right word, envision, you know what I mean. You're starting to see that the object is coming forward a little bit more. It is starting to have some texture, and our brains already recognize that it has some shiny surface because we have this high contrast. We've got really dark next to really light. And this is something that I jabber on about all the time, is high contrast, getting your lights, getting your darks, and making sure you're not afraid to go too dark. So really push in with that pencil. You can see how closely I'm holding that pencil to the tip as if I'm writing my name. I've got a really strong grip on it, and it's making sure that my lines are as dark as possible. And I also want to ensure that my lines are crisp. I mentioned earlier that metal and reflective surfaces, they all have these crisp lines because light will just follow the direction of the shape. So if you imagine like the middle section of this drawing is just a cylinder, well, those light sources, that dark strip, for example, is just traveling up in a straight line. So if you want to use a ruler for this part, by all means you should, because that will get you even sharper edges. But if you want to push yourself and do it by hand, then you should do that too. Now, once you've done the dark bits, you're going to get your 2B and you're going to shade in those midtones. So here we're looking for that medium grey. Sometimes it's a light grey, sometimes it's a medium grey, which means it's in between light and dark. But this is, again, going to push your drawing to another level. So to start, I just want you to get a base color in, or a base value, so that we're knocking off the white where it's not white, and we're starting to really feel that the item has curvature, it has depth, and it's more than just black and white. Adding loads of different shades really makes our drawing look realistic. So work your way around and see where you can add these midtones. And luckily it's quite easy to figure out where they start and stop, because reflective surfaces are very clean. They already dictate where value starts and stops, and there will be some gradients in there, and we'll get to that in a moment. But for now, it's more important just to knock off the white where areas aren't white. And then once you've done that, you'll start to look at the detail. So at the top, you know, there is a bit of a gradient. There's also some really thin lines, some really intricate details that we want to pop in. So after you've got your base layer, this is where you start to pick it up a notch. You want to start asking yourself questions like, okay, is there anything darker in this little patch that I need to put in? Can I get my shading super, super smooth? Can I make sure my edges are really crisp? So it is worth spending a bit more time on this. And as well, I find that this is the fun bit. I absolutely love shading. The outline is the graft, and this is the reward at the end. It's really making it come to life in a way that you probably didn't think that you could. But you definitely can. Everybody is super capable of doing that. So as we start to wrap up this lesson, hopefully you are happy with it. And hopefully you can see that this is a reflective surface. It's a really satisfying drawing to do. And I think actually metal can be quite terrifying because we already have expectations of it. But so long as you follow the process, so long as you've got this high contrast of light and dark and you've added a bit of detail, then your tap will absolutely come to life. So definitely spend a bit of time on it and look at the finer details. And, I'd love, love, love to see your work after this is finished. So do share what you've done with the class, as I'm sure everybody is desperate to see what you've done. Now, do remember we have plenty more courses to look at, so hopefully you can find them really, really helpful for your own drawing practice. I hope you enjoyed that class, and I really hope to see you soon. Bye now.